Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Feds in Motion Challenge, which supports FEA, the Federal Employee Education and Assistance Fund. I am Robin Keogh, Executive Director of FEA, and we are delighted to have you all here with us for our Health and Wellness Wednesday. This week, our topic is about safety and security. And we'll get started with that in just a few minutes. But first, I want to thank Compass Rose Health Plan for supporting the challenge and supporting FEA, which they've been doing for over a decade. They are staunch supporters of federal employees in general and of FEA in particular, and we are very, very grateful to have them with us again this year, and particularly grateful to have Joni Huber, the Chief Operating Officer of Compass Rose Health Plan, with us today. And I'd like to introduce Joni to say a few words.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to join the Federal Employee Education and Assistance Fund and Isabella Ulloa for today's Wellness Wednesday presentation, Cyber Health and Safety Wellness. I'm Joni Huber, Chief Operating Officer at the Compass Rose Health Plan, which is an FEHB plan that has been around for over 75 years, proudly serving federal employees, retirees, and their families. Supporting the health and well being of the federal community is at the core of what we do, which is why we're excited to sponsor the upcoming Feds in Motion Challenge in partnership with FIA. This challenge is all about staying active and engaged, values that align with our commitment to helping members live healthier lives. You can learn more about the Compass Rose Health Plan on our website at compassrosebenefits.com. Now I'm pleased to introduce today's presenter. Isabella Ulloa is the founder and CEO of Public Service Ventures, the social enterprise that powers the Public Service Alliance. Before founding PSA, Isabella served as Deputy Chief of the Staff at the Department of Homeland Security, Special Assistant to the Secretary of Homeland Security, and Managing Director at Urban Alliance. Isabella also holds a BA in International Relations from Tufts University. Please join me in welcoming Isabella Ulloa.
Thank you so much for that great introduction. And Isa, thank you so much for making time to be here with us today. For all those of you who are watching this Wellness Wednesday, we are here to talk about safety and security and how that relates to the mental and physical health of public employees in general and federal employees in particular. So I would love to start, Isa, if you would tell us a little bit about what got you interested in this topic, what got you thinking about it and then acting on it.
Yeah, well, Robin, thank you so much for having me and for being such an incredible partner to PSA since our very early days, and more importantly, for all the work that you've been doing for the last 20 years, 20 years plus, I think, supporting the federal workforce and their families. I served as a federal public servant at the Department of Homeland Security. And it was during that time that I had the privilege of working with some of the most talented, hardworking, high integrity people I've ever met, still to this day. And having grown up in Miami in a community of folks where there were not a lot of people who had served in government at the federal, state, or local level, it was really shocking to me to compare the kind of support systems that the people that I knew growing up had access to as compared to what my federal colleagues had access to. And not only that, but when I started digging in summer of 2024, digging into the really diverse range of threats and very specifically the violent threats that public servants are facing nationwide, the data just told a very sobering story, which is that those threats have skyrocketed in a really significant way since about 2013, and it's impacting folks in every single state across the country at every level of government. And so as a result, what we're seeing is, people who are choosing not to engage in public service or remain in public service because of the threat environment. And it's obviously compounded by the lack of support that they receive related not only to those threats, but more broadly. And so I think that's just fundamentally a really broken business model for building effective government and helping talented people to do the work that they want to do. And just on a personal level, I also just find it very unethical. And so, I think one of the most kind of intellectually lazy things to do is just admire problems. And so we set out to build the solutions that we wish existed.
Can you talk a little bit about what types of threats
Yeah.
people are facing?
Yeah. So again, limited to the kind of violent threats and adjacent threats category. Um, it really is, it's pretty sobering. So you have folks that, I mean, there are people who have been assassinated. There are people who receive death threats. There are people whose minor children get doxxed and also receive death threats. Depending on the different roles that folks have played, but especially people who've served in the military or in the intelligence community, there's a whole range of very sophisticated cybersecurity threats. There are a number of data privacy vulnerabilities, for example, the ease with which people can figure out where we live, that fuel a lot of that. And in my view, is itself its own kind of form of threat. And then there's, a whole range of harassment and intimidation that, that unfortunately so many people have experienced. And on top of all of it, what has really been the most kind of shocking part of this, at least for me personally, is that, whereas 20 years ago, the household names, the people that were working on really kind of politically controversial topics, had an elevated risk. These days, there's really not much predictability in terms of who could become a target next. For a number of different reasons that include, exposure of our personal information, include the way that information proliferates online. It's obviously related to the fact that I think, as a country, the temperature has gotten way too high. But again, because we don't just admire problems, and as a result, we're not into the fear mongering, we want to make sure that people know that they um, can access the tools that they need to feel empowered to better protect themselves and their families, and that taking those preventative steps to proactively increase friction between themselves and someone who might seek to harm them matters. And it can not only avert a crisis, but it can also help people remain in a more kind of productive psychological and emotional state when, there's not a lot of super positive stuff to point to.
Yeah, and so I want to key on one thing that I heard you say, which is basically that this seems like it's crossing people or potentially crossing people at any level of an organization, and that it's not necessarily related to the specific job that you're doing or your political affiliation or anything like that. It's crossing over all of that, just kind of by the nature of how much information is available about any of us now out there in the world and in our online lives in particular.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we partnered with an organization that we helped incubate called the Impact Project to build something called the Security Map, which is an interactive map of the country that shows basically one of the most comprehensive snapshots of violent threats to public servants ever compiled, and it goes back over 10 years. It compiles thousands of news articles, data from our partners at organizations like the Bridging Divides Initiative, federal court records, things of the like. And what you see when you're navigating that map is school board members in small towns that are resigning in droves due to bomb threats. All very similar threats to election workers in multiple states across the country. Judges that are receiving, the unsolicited pizza deliveries that thankfully had been reported on last year to start raising awareness of the different forms of intimidation, but also death threats and doxing to their children. And then you have really horrific and tragic examples like the assassination of Melissa Hortman and her husband last year. Um, but yeah, it is a threat landscape that is, it totally crosses partisan lines. It impacts public servants at every level of government, federal, state, and local, and every branch. And so, because that is the reality that we are in today, and because the political violence experts will tell you that the trend doesn't seem to be slated to decrease anytime soon, until we are able to solve for some of the structural conditions that are yielding such a significant threat landscape and such a dynamic threat landscape, which is part of what PSA is building infrastructure to do. We want to make sure that people have what they need right now. And so for us, what that means is basically building, our version of AARP for people who've served. So we built the first marketplace for any current or former public servant, federal, state, and local, to be able to save a lot of time and a lot of money on services that help with privacy, with physical and digital security, with access to experts like lawyers and former Secret Service agents, with a whole host of financial and personal well-being tools, to include the incredible services that your team offers. And we do that by basically curating an ever-growing library of either free services, heavily subsidized services, or discounted services, which basically means that we go out and identify and vet commercial solutions. Sometimes those solutions are only available to companies, not individuals. And we negotiate pretty significant discounts. So, for example, you could get a Brinks home alarm security system through PSA for $90 a year instead of $600 a year. And importantly, we don't take referral fees or kickbacks. We don't have a vested interest in what you use. We just want to make sure that people are using what they need to elevate that preventative baseline.
And so let's talk for a minute about, I'm sure that there's sort of a different approach if you're somebody in a position where you've maybe already experienced some of these threats, versus if you're somebody who hasn't experienced threats, but still might be feeling anxious and concerned in the environment that we're in now. What can we do to not just make ourselves feel safer, but actually be safer?
Yeah. So we have I guess, a checklist on our website, which is also where our marketplace lives. It's publicservicealliance.com. We have a checklist called the
We'll put up links to all these things for everybody as well.
Awesome. It's a free product on the marketplace that's called the PSA ABCs of Prevention. And it's basically a checklist of the kind of non-negotiable stuff that we recommend people do, again, across privacy, digital, and physical security. And then it's got additional information for people who either want to go a click deeper or who feel that they are higher risk and want to understand, for example, how to pack a good go bag. We are in the process of developing more tools that will help people identify what combination of services we recommend they use relative to their unique risk profile. But we don't have that online yet. And so in the interim, what we recommend people do is review the checklist and then just reach out at hello@thepublicservicealliance.com with any questions. And also, if there are services that people have used or would like to use that help them to feel safer or more supported that are not already on the marketplace, we really would love to hear about it, because as long as those services meet our criteria, which include ensuring that there's not a lot of daylight between what the company says it does and what it actually does, we most likely can add it to the marketplace.
Great. Um, Thinking for a minute about digital security, because I think that's something that everybody's aware of to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But I think we often don't think about what apps we're downloading to our phones and tablets, what people maybe are letting their kids have free access to at home. Are there things in that realm that you don't need a special product to take some
Yeah.
action? Can we talk a little bit about, like, what are some easy things that people could be
Yeah.
paying attention to there?
Well, it's a really good point because across both digital and physical security, there's a bunch of stuff people can do for free that where they don't have to spend any money. And that ABCs of prevention checklist covers a lot of it, right? So from a digital security perspective, the first place I recommend people start is on our partner Take9's website, and it's as the name implies, 9 very simple steps that everybody should take to elevate their cybersecurity posture. One of the most important kind of non-negotiable ones being that people ensure that they have two-factor or multi-factor authentication enabled on every single account, full stop. The second, is around, as annoying as it might sound, but, being really kind of mindful and thoughtful about how phishing attacks evolve because they still are overwhelmingly the most kind of significant source of attacks and incidents. And then there are, additional, I wouldn't call them kind of more sophisticated recommendations. Again, these are just, I think, important steps for people to become acquainted with and kind of normalize in their routines. But it's stuff like, try not to use public Wi-Fi, and if so, make sure you're using a VPN. And for your Wi-Fi router at home, like maybe don't call it Ulloa's Wi-Fi router. um, Call it something else that is not as identifiable. But the point I'm trying to make is that uh, with a little bit of time, a lot of these steps that can materially elevate your cyber defenses become less daunting, and they're fairly easy and oftentimes free to implement. Similarly, from a home security perspective, there's stuff you can do beyond paying a privacy deletion service to make it harder for data brokers to sell your home address. Things like blurring your home on Google Maps for free. Learning some kind of basic safety and security awareness best practices that include things like, for example, not having a ton of hedges or foliage blocking your doorway and the entrance to your home, so that it's less likely for a potential attacker to be hiding. Ensuring that your home perimeter is well lit at night. And then also ensuring that that we kind of adjust our thinking to be a little bit more risk based, in the sense that, for example, if we don't typically receive heavy envelopes in the mail, and one day you get an envelope that feels unusually heavy, take it to the post office to get screened instead of opening it, on your dinner table. And so what I really want people to feel when they hear me talk about this is that I totally understand that it can feel daunting, and it's why we have several experts, to include former Secret Service experts, that are part of our network, who will partner with folks either one-on-one or at the organizational level to help them think through the best kind of risk mitigation decisions for them.
It does feel like a daunting task as an individual. I can imagine, I just for myself and for other women who might be listening to this, some of these things are things that, as a woman, particularly if you live alone, these are probably things that you're either already thinking about or doing in relation to physical safety. But just sort of that importance of just paying a little bit more attention, being aware of your surroundings. And if you've got kids in your household, not scaring them, but teaching them those skills as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, absolutely. And look, I don't have kids of my own, but we have partnered with a lot of individuals who are at very high risk who do. And, I don't take lightly how difficult it has been for them to communicate certain things to their children, especially their young children who are still in this really awesome, phase of innocence. But, the importance of not answering the door without, mom being home, things like that. And part of this is, I think, or something relevant to this that I think is important for me to say out loud is, while we don't have a formal network of people who have been threatened, that anyone could just go to our website and connect with, we informally do have a long list of folks who have reached out to say, hey, I personally or my family experienced this really kind of horrible thing well before PSA existed. If there are people who are facing it for the first time and they want to talk to someone just who understands what it feels like, give them my number. So again, just reach out if that would be of help.
So if we had somebody out there who's, maybe thinking about um, accepting a position that would put them in make them more of a target, that there might be somebody that they could talk to about what is that like in
Yeah,
reality.
Yeah, I mean, so in that situation, I would recommend two things. Number one is I would recommend talking to our security experts who, formally work with us on helping people understand, based on their unique expertise, what those individuals should do relative to their risk profile, especially because for the most part, an individual's risk profile is not what's the word I'm looking for? Stagnant or consistent, right? I mean, it can be very cyclical depending on moments of higher visibility and things of the like. So we would recommend that. And then in addition to that, if folks want to have a conversation with someone who's not necessarily a security expert, but just kind of a human to human, hey, how would you think about this? There are several people who have offered to kind of be that sounding board informally.
That's great. Um, I, you know, I can't say enough about this community that you're building
Yeah.
to really help people and to provide practical help. Because I think that, there are a lot of times we go looking for information and it's easy to find general information about something, but then you're kind of left on your own to figure out what to do. How do I mitigate this
Yeah.
risk? Like I can read all these things and then it's like, oh, well, you need a home security system. Well, what kind of home security system do I need? How do I know what to do there? How do I find a reputable
Yeah.
company for something like that? So building this marketplace and making it really specific to the situation of public employees, I think is a noble thing to be doing, and it's going to help a lot of people.
Well, thank you. And two things in response to that. First of all, we are ruthlessly disciplined about not building things that other groups already do well. And so that's why you see on our marketplace that we either formally refer to or amplify organizations like yours that have demonstrated track records of very specifically delivering results. The second thing is, despite spending about a decade in DC before I did some other time in the Northeast and then came back down to my hometown of Miami, I have a severely negative reaction to the constant press releases, the constant white papers, the constant, quotes to choose the national media outlet of the day, and pretending that really does much. Right. And similarly, I don't think it's helpful to, especially when people are scared, to bombard them with a bunch of disorganized, unvetted information. So we definitely are trying to build a scalable tech platform that can be kind of the proverbial one-stop shop. We are investing in making it easier to navigate because at this point, especially with over 50 services on the marketplace, it can get hard to figure out, again, what combination of stuff people should use. So we're building tools that we hope to launch before the end of the year to make all of that easier. But more than anything else, we just want to make sure that everything that we do is practical and real, and not just an editorial of a thing that like everybody knows is a problem. So that's why it's so important to me that folks reach out with stuff that they need, stuff that they find valuable, stuff that they wish they could access, because I just believe very much in the importance of having proximity to the problem. And this is a population of over 40 million people. So it's impossible for any single person to have expertise, across the board. And this is ultimately a platform that's built for and by public servants. And we want our users to know that they're part of that community.
I think people are really going to feel that. Um, and I just wanted to say to folks listening, if you're not in the place where you're feeling a lot of threats or um, in a position where you've experienced that what we were talking about a few minutes ago, kind of starting with that checklist and just going through and taking some simple steps that can benefit anyone, even if you're not a public servant, to just be a little bit more aware of our surroundings physically and digitally, and to think about how we can put ourselves in a position where we might not have to experience any of these negative things, hopefully.
Yeah, and I would add that again, given the state of the world, given the state of the threat landscape as it stands today, a lot of our focus has been around privacy and security, both from a prevention and a crisis response perspective. But if you go to the marketplace, what you'll see is a growing set of resources around career support, um, personal mental well-being, financial well-being, both with partners like your team, Robin, for folks who might be facing financial hardship or crisis, but also with other organizations that can help kind of complement that suite of services. We have discounts to services, whether those are commercial apps or in-person workshops that are evidence-based programs to support people with stress and anxiety, which the vast majority of us experience, right? And so my hope is that the marketplace can evolve one day to be the place where people who've chosen to serve in government can access things that are very similar to what they would be able to access if they worked at the Fortune 500. And in order for that to be possible, we are really focused through a program that we launched called the Security Project on identifying the nonpartisan policy solutions that will make public service safer if we are able to, as a country, generate the political will to prioritize it. Because the reality is that this marketplace, at least this portion of privacy and security services, like in theory, shouldn't have to exist. And as the kid of Cuban immigrants, it's super personal to me because it's just like unbelievable that in America, when people disagree with each other, they're showing up, on each other's on each other's lawns with pipe bombs to voice that displeasure. I mean, it's just so fundamentally un-American. So I share that because when folks go to the website, if they feel like they're kind of covered on the privacy and security pieces, on the balance of stuff that impacts their professional and personal lives, wherever they might see gaps, we'd love to know about them.
And as I said before, we are going to put up links in the video and on our site to PSA and to a lot of these great tools that we've been talking about today, so that people can go right where they need to go to get started checking their own privacy and security. And again, the reason we're talking about this during the Feds in Motion Challenge is because we are focused on wellness, and that is holistic wellness. It is your mental and physical well-being, as well as your mental and physical health. Those things are one and the same. They are intertwined. And when we are not feeling physically safe or emotionally safe, that can impact our physical health just as much as our mental health. So, Isa, thank you so much for taking time today to talk with us about this, to focus on an issue that I think gets talked about sort of tangentially a lot, but that we don't stop and really talk about how these things can impact the well-being of feds and their families.
Thank you, Robin. And again, thank you so much for your partnership and support. It really means the world.
Likewise. Isa, thank you again so much for that illuminating conversation. And I know that people watching today got a lot of great knowledge that they maybe didn't have before about how to improve their safety and security and impact their wellness in a positive way. I also want to thank again Compass Rose Health Plan for their support and Joni Huber for being here with us today. We hope we'll see you again next week for the final week of the Feds in Motion Challenge and our final Wellness Wednesday of 2026.